And I guess part of the question also is like, what is Kabbalah? What's the point of Kabbalah, right? So it's a very interesting question. And so first of all, the word Kabbalah means received, which basically refers to the received information, teacher to student, all the way back to Moses at Sinai, and even further back, Abraham, all these people who spoke with God, learned about the soul, understood the soul, and they passed this information down, and it was kept secret most of the time because it's very mystical, and people, you can misunderstand things. There have been people which have taken this information and gotten into trouble. There's stories back in the Talmud and the Gemara about certain Tanaim. There were three sages, three Tanaim, which it says that they went into the Pardes, to the orchard, referring to the orchard of the secrets of the Torah. And
and you gotta explain what that is.
In other words, Kabbalah, right? And only one of them came out in peace. One of them, I can't remember all the details. I think one of them died. One of them went crazy.
Wait, you're saying that they learned the deepest secrets of Kabbalah and they couldn't handle it?
Yes.
And so even today we don't know what that was.
So it's a very interesting question. In other words, I'm teaching Kabbalah right now to the masses.
Right.
How can I be teaching something which scholars 2,000 years ago, which we understand were on a higher spiritual level, they were much more exposed to godliness. How could it be that we are teaching? How could it be that I am teaching this? Those people which are quoted in the Talmud, they're obviously much greater than me. How in the world can I be teaching this to people which are completely foreign to the basics?
Right.
That's a very good question. We'll get to that. So the Kabbalah was always kept a secret. That's why it's called Kabbalah, received, right? So, for example, the written text of the Torah is revealed. Although everybody should have some sort of mentor involved in their study, but that's something which was written. In other words, you can open a book, and no, it is true that you can't really understand the 5 books of Moses at face value. It speaks over there, let's say, about the tefillin which we put on, the phylacteries, the black boxes, and it's there's no discussion. It doesn't say anywhere in the 5 books of Moses they're supposed to bind black boxes made out of leather with black straps on your arm. It doesn't say that anywhere. What it does say, very simply, is that you should remember these words referring to the fact that you're supposed to love God and remember that God is one. You should bind them on your arm, on your hands as a remembrance.
Isn't that what Yaakov did?
It doesn't explain what that is. It doesn't explain what that is. And you should have them as taitafes, which is a word which is even debated exactly what it means.
What I mean between your is that Yaakov put on thorn. He described.
No, so he didn't put on tefillin. He did an act. He did an act with sticks, which accomplished the same spiritual value as tefillin. So obviously, anybody that's learning anything, even in the 5 books of Moses, you can't just come and interpret it however you want. Even that has a tradition of what these things mean. In other words, those things which we bind on our hands, we know what it is because my father got it from his father, who got it from his father, all the way back. So we know what this is. But Kabbalah was kept even more secret. In other words, you need to be a really rigorous student. You'd really need to be involved and a deep scholar in order to be exposed to this information. And the people which had this information would choose, based off their understanding, who would be a good receiver for this information. It's very deep information. Now, what is this information? This information, the Kabbalah, what is it? It basically speaks about the process of how God created the world. And that process really is a bunch of levels of spiritual evolution, so to speak, kind of how this physical universe evolved from God.
Right.
and obviously there's creation in between. It's not like
I've watched your videos.
right. It's not like it's not like an evolution that it's like a continuous chain of events. It's not there. There's obviously a lot of stops where there's something, completely different. There's like a change, a creation. So there's these spiritual levels, and in those spiritual levels, you have angels and souls, and where heaven and hell are. Now, all of these spiritual levels are beyond time and space. It could be extremely disturbing to somebody who's, you start thinking about very extreme cosmic questions, like what is the purpose? If I'm accomplishing something, and if the whole point is about something which is beyond time and space, like everything that I know is within time and space. Everything that I know is so different. And when you put yourself into that place of thought, it can be very disturbing to many people. So it depends really how you're looking at it. If you're just academically looking at it and, evaluating the information, so you're probably not gonna have much harm from that.
But I think maybe it could be because people are very closed-minded, and we're way more open-minded these days. I think there was, I don't know, this could be wrong. I don't know, you tell me. But people were very small-minded when they were in the past. Like, people didn't get out. The social media wasn't there. They didn't see the whole world. I feel maybe the people are just more open-minded to things these days. Does that make any sense? And that's why we're able to learn. That's why Hashem, God, I'm just trying to understand why we're able to learn it now with no consequences, I guess.
Right. I think really the simple answer to that is that back in the day, the way it was stored and kept, the way it was passed down, was very abstract information. It was.
The question is it any different from then and now? Teachings that you are teaching, is it the same thing as those rabbis that literally went crazy?
It is different, and I think in two ways. Okay. First of all, I think that back in the day, when they would study this, they would take it way more seriously. People have been able to create a golem, right? The Maharal made a golem. He made a fake human, right? Like a kind of robot, but without any electronics, kind of just a Kabbalah human. It's like a person without a soul.
Right.
Or he has some kind of soul, but different, maybe like an angel's soul. That's crazy, right? To be able to create like a fake person which can not speak but can interact with people and walk around and looks like a guy.
That knowledge we for sure don't have these days.
No.
If we did,
it says that there are 36 hidden, people which have this information, but we don't necessarily know who they are.
That's crazy to think about.
But so I think that that's one reason why back in the day it was kept more secret, and basically because people would take this very seriously. It was extremely esoteric information. People would take this seriously, and if you're exposed to a certain degree, like imagine like if you imagine you're able to create a person. What does that mean about you? That means that like you're really in tune with your soul. But imagine you get it, but you just can't handle it. It's crazy. You can't handle that in infinite understanding. So you just snap. You go crazy. So
yeah, I think we're not learning the deep Kabbalah. We're just doing the crevices.
So what we're really learning is we're learning the information, right? We're not necessarily really connecting to the information the way they used to, and that's perhaps one reason why it's more okay to study it these days. But I think the main reason that
we're not connecting to how they used to.
Yeah, we're not really getting it, and because we're not really getting it, it's kind of safer.
Oh, interesting. So like people back then were sort of more spiritual.
Perhaps. But that's not a perfect answer, because another reason why it's not okay to learn Kabbalah is precisely for that reason, not getting it. In other words, it's hard to understand, and because we can make a mistake and understand it in the wrong way, therefore we shouldn't learn it. Because there have been people, for example, an individual like Shabtai Tzvi, which was massively influential. He married a Torah scroll because of his understanding of Kabbalah. And that is a disgrace, obviously, to the Torah scroll. And because of his understanding of these Kabbalistic realms, he basically said that the basic code of law is no longer valid.
When you say that,
He warped the information of Kabbalah. So that's another reason why Kabbalah was supposed to be kept secret, because if you get it wrong, you can really mess up your life. The point of this world is to make it a better place, to bring God's commandments and to bring God's godliness into this world.
so there is a way we can understand God. We could understand it. We wouldn't be able to handle it, though. Like, there is a way, there are abilities, like you say, the 64 people in the world that know about this stuff, right?
Right.
So if they were to tell it to me, I wouldn't be able to handle it. I'd do crazy stuff like that Shabtai Tzvi guy. It sounds pretty crazy how you say it, and I'm assuming it's not as simple as how you say it. You said he had relations with the terror. Like, I'm sure it was not as simple as you're making it. It's more Kabbalistic.
No,
but evil at the same time. He was using.
He thought he was doing something spiritual. In other words, he was trying to show that he's connecting with spirituality, but it's a Torah scroll, which is a physical Torah scroll.
He couldn't handle the knowledge.
He took it wrong. In other words, he was a sinner. So there's two reasons. A genuine person can really become messed up if he studies pure Kabbalah because of the crazy revelation, and also a non-genuine person, if you're not genuine and you learn Kabbalah, you can really mess up life for a lot of people. And he did mess up life for a lot of people. People really believed in him.
Today, right?
I don't know about that, but people really believed in him, and they sold their houses for very cheap prices because they thought Messiah was coming. So they're going to move now with him to the land of Israel.
By someone else.
So he really, he used Kabbalah to, and he was very, popular. He gained popularity. And we know today, obviously, that just because you're popular, it doesn't mean that you're sacred. And he was charismatic, and he got people to do this. So that's one issue with Kabbalah, that if a scammer gets a hold of it, it's not good for certain people to get a hold of it, a hold of the information. You were mentioning understanding God. That's a very good question. We cannot understand God, right?
But that is a sliver.
What's that?
It is a sliver.
Nobody can understand God.
But you said that Kabbalah can explain to you how Hashem created the world.
Exactly. That's slightly different.
That's a sliver.
What do you mean by that?
Of how to understand
You can understand the drop.
Yeah, how to understand he did it.
Exactly.
He's
So
trying to explain to me how he did it. So
right. So one way that you can look at it, for example, if I want to tell you that science is trying to figure out what the core of existence is, right? So 300 years ago, let's say, I don't know exactly when they discovered the atom, right? And then as they move on, they realize that the atom is made out of smaller particles. And now as they move on, they realize that even those particles, that they're part of something else. They're really waves in some sort of continuum. Although we don't necessarily understand that, but we kind of learn more and more. So in Kabbalah, there are many stages. And so to speak, the higher you go, meaning the closer you get to God, the less we understand. By the time we get to, so to speak, the highest level of godliness, we don't know anything over there. And the truth is that what's interesting about Kabbalah is the only things we can really understand are like a few of the lowest levels of Kabbalah. Like, it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg. That's only really what we understand. Most of what Kabbalah talks about, we cannot truly grasp in our minds, but we understand that it works in the same structure, and we can get into that. Should we?
I mean, is it as simple as the structure how we understand it.
Yeah, in other words,
Works in our minds.
so us humans, well, exactly, it works in our minds.
Yeah.
So us humans, we have a soul, and the soul has a few parts to it. It has its power of understanding. It has its power of feeling, of being emotional, and it has its power of doing. The ability to express outwards. Now, a feeling is not an expression outwards. It's an inner feeling, but it's a feeling too. It's what I feel about something else outside of me, right? And understanding, logic, is something that you understand, but you're kind of connected to the idea within you. And really, the logic of the soul, although you might say, oh, my feelings are for things outside of me, and my logic are for things outside of me. I understand things outside of me, but it's very different. Because the way it works in the soul is, the soul, what it understands is, it's understanding truth. In other words, it's understanding where it's coming from. It's understanding something above it, so to speak. And its feelings are the way it relates to things outside of it, in a sense, below it, right? The way it relates to things that it's interested in. Logic relates to things that are objectively true. Feelings relate to things that the individual is interested in. So in other words, it looks at it in a lower level. And then expression, let's say speech, for example, or action, is purely expression. There's nothing in it for you. Feelings are I'm feeling. Logic is you, so to speak, thinking about something in its true sense. So that's the highest level. Logic is the highest level, and you have feelings, and then you have action or expression the lowest. Those are these three levels in the soul, and that's why we have it in our human experience also. We understand things which are true objectively, which we must accept. In other words, if something is true, that means it's real, even if you don't like it. But then your feelings, you like what you like. In other words, takes you into account in relation to other things. And then expression is really only taking into account the other person. Because if you've expressed yourself to nobody, have you expressed yourself?
No, you haven't.
Not really. Expression is made for other people. I mean, you could speak to yourself in a room.
And it's also the choices that you make. Like, it's a ladder. Tell me if I'm wrong, but the logic is the truth. The feeling is what you choose to feel. And then the action is also a choice, because you can decide what you feel when it comes down to it. You have feelings. You can decide what feelings matter and what feelings don't. And then you can decide what actions you do. I'd say most people don't do that. They just, they just choose not the easiest feeling, and they go for the action. And I think to be a good human being, you have to choose the right feeling and then to choose the right action.
But you would agree that it's harder to choose a feeling, it's harder to control your feelings than it is to control your actions.
100%.
Right?
Yes.
Why? Because your feelings are more part of you than actions. Actions are something which is an expression. So you have control over what
That's
you
why
release.
it's a ladder, I think. The logic, the feeling, and then the action.
So these are things which we have in our human experience, in our body, and we get it really from our soul. Because a dead person, which is really a person without a soul, doesn't think, doesn't feel, and doesn't express, right? All these things come to us from our soul. These abilities come to us from our soul.
It's logical even.
Right.
It makes sense. Like, it answers the question of, like, the subconscious, like, who we are.
Definitely.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So now the soul comes from these spiritual levels, these spiritual worlds, somewhere in the Kabbalah realm. And these spiritual worlds also have a bit of a similar process. The last three worlds, realms, spiritual planes of existence, which Kabbalah talks about, and I don't mean the last in terms of history, like time, I mean the bottom three realms, the ones closest to the physical world, furthest, so to speak, from God, they work in the same way as intellect, feelings, and expression, action.
Okay, like this might be a very okay, let me just ask the question and then you'll tell me. But are these worlds the soul? Like, why? I was thinking that the worlds is the soul. Is that on the wrong track or is that on the right track?
It's
Because
somewhere in the middle.
is it like you were saying, logic, feeling, and action? Is it like that? Is that those are the worlds? Because I was gonna ask you like, what are these worlds? Like I watched a video trying to explain it, you explaining it, and I guess it hasn't I don't know. It hasn't answered my question.
Yeah, they are short. They don't necessarily get into everything in depth. It's going to be a bit of a longer conversation than the 10-minute videos. That is, it's a very you have a very valid point. What you're saying over here, and it's somewhere in between. So these worlds are not the soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the soul has a few levels. In other words, there's the soul. It's really all one soul.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the part of the soul which expresses, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like when we speak, we're not using our brains to the full extent, like when we try to figure something out, right? We're trying to figure out a hard problem. Then we're using our brain. But when we're speaking, we're kind of using a more casual part of us. So the soul has a very, in terms of its infinity and spirituality, it has parts of it that are more reserved for itself, and they're intensely spiritual and more relatable to the infinite. And then it has parts of it that are more related to expression, right? It's really all one soul. It's not like,
right?
It's like we have body parts, so the soul has it's one soul with
right. And I was
different ways.
I was connecting that to your whole thing about the worlds,
right?
Because it is like that. Like the lower worlds are closer to us, and the higher ones are
exactly.
God.
So really, so the soul has.
But wait, I also want to understand, what are these? Is it what I'm saying? Or what are the worlds? What is the worlds? Because
what are these worlds? We're going to get to that.
Basically,
we'll get to that momentarily. So the soul has these 3 levels also in it. It has its logical part of it, and it's experiencing a certain level of spirituality. When a soul is objectively thinking about the truth of everything, which is really the infinity of God, when it's looking at that objectively, it's experiencing a very intense world, so to speak, of spirituality, understanding God. And then when the soul feels God, it's really bringing that intense spirituality into, so to speak, a lower plane of infinity. It's still the soul,
which is hard spiritual. It's hard to feel Hashem.
Right, but the soul does. So it's actually interesting. For the soul, you would say that it's, so to speak, harder to understand God, because it needs to accept God's truth and look at it objectively. But the feelings of the soul, in other words, when the soul focuses on its own why is it hard for us to feel God? Because we can't relate to God in this physical world. Right. But the soul does feel God. So to the soul, it's much more natural to just feel God. This is what I am. Imagine you see God right now. Bam. You see God right in front of you. You would like feel something. Probably fear. You'd be scared. I don't know if you love him so much, but the soul kind of has this mixture of love and awe of God, because God is all powerful, all knowing. But on the other hand, God is so amazing and so beautiful. This is where you come from. This is everything. So it's something that it's so amazing. It's so you want to connect to it. So you'd really be overwhelmed with feelings, right? If you see that. So, but that is really a lower level of the soul, where the soul is kind of thinking about itself rather than experiencing God to what God is objectively. And then there is how the soul expresses that energy of connecting to God into the world, into our body, right? Now, what do we mean by worlds? So let's think of it like this. We here in this physical universe, in this world, we don't feel all of that, right? We don't see God. We don't.
Right.
But we're in this world. Where the soul is feeling its feelings is in a higher world. So I would kind of say, like, have you ever entered the world of your daughter? Right? Have you ever like tried to put yourself in her mind?
Sure.
You get that question?
Yes.
You
understand how she's
What do you mean
looking
world?
at the world.
Exactly. What do you mean by world? You're in the same world. You're in the same universe, right? But you're not. Like, she's looking at it in a different way. You're trying to understand how she sees it. So that's really what these worlds are. These worlds, they're all happening in the same place. It's just you're in a different level of existence. So if we were right now to become extremely sacred, right? And we'd somehow connect to our soul, then we would be living in this physical universe. Perhaps we can't really experience it in this physical universe, and maybe if we would connect to our soul in such a, great extent, then perhaps our soul would leave our body, right? And perhaps, we spoke about in the beginning how certain people died after they studied Kabbalah. In other words, they saw the light of God and they connected to it in such an intense way that they died. Their soul left their body. In other words, they put themselves into a world which is beyond themselves, but it's right here.
Right.
They just understood what everything is really about. They saw everything in a whole different way.
Yeah.
Right?
Interesting.
So there's three levels of spirituality above us, right? There's, as we said before, and those are really the only three levels which we can kind of understand to an extent, because even those three are beyond time and space. There's no time and space there.
You're talking about truth, feeling, and action.
Right. There isn't really time and space there. Not the way we know it. So how much can we really understand it? Can we understand anything which operates beyond time and space? Yeah. We can't really grasp it, right? Because everything that we grasp has to have some sort of boundary, right? And we understand that there's a boundary between feelings and logic, but it's kind of like it's a conceptual boundary, right? But we could understand it. Now, anything beyond that, we totally don't understand. Anything beyond these three worlds, we totally don't understand. So how does Kabbalah tell us about a whole bunch of stuff happening even beyond these three worlds which we just spoke about? Now, these three worlds which we just spoke about is where heaven and hell are, right?
Right.
This is where the souls hang around. This is where the angels are. All these crazy angels.
Really, the last three worlds.
Yeah. Well, the angels are even in the lower worlds. Angels are emotional creatures, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
There are some intellectual angels, which Kabbalah talks about, but angels are mainly emotional. The angel Malach Michael and Malach Gabriel, Michael and Gabriel, they exist in the world of Yetzirah, which is the middle one of those three worlds. Understand? And they are these. They're these crazy angels, which if you would see.
No. What I'm thinking right now is like, we talked about how we are in our own worlds.
Right.
Within the worlds, like our world of action and our world of feeling and our world of logic. So how do you compare that to the worlds, the worlds that the angels are in? Like you're saying, like it's the same thing. It's parallel somehow. The world,
everything is really in one place. Yeah. And the way I really like to look at it is not that.
Where are they?
They're right here. They're right here. Because if you think about it, what's really real is not this world. What's really real are the spiritual worlds, right? Because this world, physical world, time and space comes from the spiritual worlds, right? So I wouldn't even say that the angels exist here. I would say that we exist in the place where the angels exist. But what's crazy is that there is no time and space where the angels exist. But that's where we exist. In other words, time and space, the universe
that we use, us humans, the beauty, I don't know if that's the right word, in us is that we use all three worlds while we exist.
I think that would be, to some extent, very correct.
Wow.
In other words, without the spiritual world of logic, perhaps we wouldn't be able to understand anything. Our brains wouldn't work, because logic is really all about looking at something objectively. But if there wouldn't be the concept of looking at something objectively for real, then how would we be able to experience it? Right? So if that world of spirituality, which exists between objectivity and expression, in other words, emotion is that middle world. If that wouldn't exist, then perhaps we as humans, we wouldn't be able to feel any emotions, because our emotions are really a product of that concept of an emotional realm. So really, everything is everywhere. Everything is happening. It's just, everything is really happening within God, right?
Right.
And we really exist in a place where there's no time and space. And it's the fabric, really, of reality. Like when you look, when we go beyond the atoms and the quantum fields, what's at the core of everything? It's this spirituality. It's here. It's in every fabric. But that fabric is not time and space. Does not have time and space. Is not bound by time and space.
It's what keeps us alive.
Exactly. Now, what's crazy is that it's not like we got deeper and deeper and deeper. Oh, like deep down there's no time and space. But up here, there is time and space. No. The fabric of time and space is not time and space, right? And it's interesting because in quantum mechanics and even in physics these days, they have some of this idea of like time and space warping and kind of not really existing anymore. And it's fascinating that physics is coming up with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But back to Kabbalah. So these are really the only three worlds that we can kind of understand. Whatever Kabbalah talks about beyond that is basically a repetition of these three worlds, but we just have to imagine it on a more spiritual level. How do you imagine something on a more spiritual level? Well, we can understand that there's different planes of spirituality, right? Because we can understand that the soul has this world of feelings, which is a spiritual world. It connects to God in a personal way. That's spiritual emotions. And then there's another level of spirituality in which it connects to God in an objective way, appreciating God for what God is. So there's two levels of spirituality here, right? So we can understand that there's different levels of spirituality. And then there's the third level of spirituality, which is expression, which you kind of diminish all the spirituality and you're filtering it to go to somewhere else. So we can appreciate the idea that beyond these three levels of spirituality, there is another bunch of levels of spirituality, which we don't understand, but they work in the same system. In other words,
I mean, considering that we don't understand fully these three levels,
right?
how could we even comprehend?
That's what I'm trying to address. If we can't really understand this, so how are we trying to understand something higher?
Right.
And the way I'm trying to explain that is that we use the same program, right? We kind of like a measuring stick, I would say. You can take a 12-inch measuring stick and you measure one thing 12 inches.
Right.
And then you measure the next 12 inches, the next 12 inches, the next 12 inches. So if you would first look at the whole thing, you wouldn't really be able to, you wouldn't know what the full measurement of this whole thing is.
Right.
I mean, obviously, with a lot of practice, you can get better at it.
What do you mean by that? Can't see the full measurement of it?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some people that are very good at estimating,
Right, by
very
just
good.
looking at it.
Right. But the point is, it's a bit of a similar idea. We have this measuring stick. In other words, we have these three levels of spirituality. We can understand how spirituality evolves, so to speak.
In our level.
Right. And then we realize that, wait a second, these three levels were the soul. Okay. How the soul experiences things. But there are many souls, and there's God. How did the soul come from God? God is one. So how does all this happen? So we understand that there are higher levels of spirituality. Understanding logic, right? We understand that ideas come from somewhere. Logic comes from somewhere. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Where does truth come from? I mean, it comes from the truth, but when we understand the truth, we're understanding what the truth is. But that truth is it's coming from somewhere. What is the actual real thing, right? And that is something which is beyond these three levels. It's something which is higher than the soul. The soul is understanding. When the soul is in its level of understanding, of, so to speak, logic, it's really understanding God, which is beyond that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, just like us humans are speaking about the three levels of the soul, even though the soul is beyond us, like we understand that our logic and everything that we experience spiritually comes from a higher thing than us, a higher world, a soul, which is giving us life. The soul can understand how it's coming from another three levels, which are higher than it. And those three levels are going to be each one more abstract than the one before it, beyond the three levels that we spoke about. In other words, the level which the soul understands is higher than it, is way more spiritual, way more spiritual. The first level, the top level that we're speaking about, that logical level of the soul, is called Bria, which means creation. And it is a creation. It's created. It's something separate. Now, creation means something coming from nothing. What does something coming from nothing mean? Came from somewhere. It came from God.
Yeah.
When we say the word nothing, we're referring to the idea that there is zero relationship between the two.
Between the two of what?
The creation and the creator. And when I say relationship, what I mean is that there is nothing in common. It's like saying that time and space come from non-time and space, from not time and space. We don't understand what it means, no time and space.
Right.
We know that there is time and space. How could you understand not time and space? So the soul understands itself as itself, and it can understand that it comes from God, but it doesn't understand, it can't comprehend that world beyond it, where it's coming from. It's coming from a world where it does not exist, meaning which it cannot relate to. The soul doesn't really experience time and space, but it's coming from a place where it's like as if it's coming from a place that there's no time and space. In other words, the same contrast between us and the soul, we don't know anything about the soul. There's the same contrast between the highest level of the soul and the place where it's coming from. That place is called Atzilus.
Wow. It's a lot.
Right. And Atzilus is the world of action to a higher set of three levels, three worlds. So let me summarize, yeah?
Yeah.
We spoke about the three levels of the soul, right? Now, how do we understand the three levels of the soul? Not because we understand the soul, because we understand ourselves.
Right.
But obviously, the three levels of the soul, and any level of the soul, is completely beyond us, because it doesn't exist in space and time.
What do you mean by that? You said
Space and time are only things that we, in this physical universe, we use to understand and really how the world exists.
Right.
Right? The soul exists, is spiritual.
Right.
What does that mean? It means it doesn't exist in a space and in a time. It exists beyond space and time. But still, we're talking about the soul.
Okay.
We're able to understand the difference of the different levels of the soul and its different experiences, based off our kind of spiritual experience.
Right.
But we don't really understand the soul, right?
Right.
Now, the soul itself has the same issue with where it's coming from. The soul's soul, so to speak.
Where it comes from.
Yeah.
The top.
Yeah, where's it coming from? Where's the soul coming from?
Top worlds.
Yeah. So the soul doesn't understand the worlds above it, but those worlds above it also have these three levels, right?
And they don't understand the higher levels.
Exactly.
It's interesting because I know that a soul is part of God.
So how could the soul be a part of God?
Yeah, it's because you call our soul. There's to be levels to our soul
Right.
that we use every day. So you taught, how many worlds are there? There are 9, right?
We don't really talk about 9 worlds, right? But there is this idea of 3 times 3, right? In other words, there's these 3 levels.
Yeah.
Those are the lowest 3 levels of the soul. And then those 3 levels come from a 3 level.
Mm-hmm.
And those, and they're the same type of 3 levels. In other words, it's logic, emotions, expression, or action, right?
Right.
And then there's another 3 levels of logic, emotion, and expression. And 3 times 3, in other words, the highest set is most similar to logic, objectivity.
You saying that the more you go up, the more it becomes more logical and more.
It's not really logic, but in other words, the same type of difference there is between our logic and our feelings and our action or our expression is the same type of difference there is between the 3 levels above the 3 levels of the soul. It's
the middle.
Yeah. And then there's another 3 levels on top. Now, the 3 levels on top, 3 levels in the middle, 3 levels on the bottom, when you zoom out and look at them, you see 9. So the 3 levels on the top are going to be on this graph like logic.
Yeah.
3 in the middle are going to be like emotions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You get it? So that's how we understand this. We don't really understand
our action.
We don't really
The
understand.
middle is feeling, and the top is logic. And then in the logic, there's 3 levels. And in the feeling, there's 3 levels. And in the action, there's 3 levels.
Right.
Wow.
But we don't really look at it. We don't really look at it in that way.
Right.
Right?
Why not?
The
What would
way
be the point of explaining it that way if we don't look at it that way?
the Kabbalah really only speaks about 4 worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And what are those 4 worlds? It's the 3 levels of the soul and the place where the soul comes from.
Mm-hmm.
They're called Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Right? And the level in the middle, which we spoke about, Atzilus, so it's kind of seen like that world, that level is created by God, and it's part of God. And then there's the 3 levels of creation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the 3 levels above.
See, this is why I have a hard time understanding this, because there's so many. It's hard to, like, in your head, understanding it all together.
Right.
It's insane. It's so crazy.
Right.
It's cool that you understand all of it, because you're talking about in different ways to look at it, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's higher ways to look at it.
Right.
It's so many different 9 worlds. No, really, it's 4 worlds. But in those 4 worlds, there's 9 worlds. But there's different ways to look at it and different meanings and different. Yeah.
Right. Should we try?
So what is okay?
Should we try talking about those 3 middle levels, which is really one? Should we try talking about that a little?
Why?
Right.
Why would we talk about that? To find.
Let's see if we can find a little clarity.
Maybe we should go for a more lower conversation, a more okay, so this is crazy stuff. We're learning about how the world works.
Yeah.
How each of us work.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
I don't want. I feel like that's a question I already asked. I'll ask it and then you'll tell me if it's already a question. Okay, what's the purpose in learning this stuff? I mean, it's nice information. It's great. And we're not going to understand it either way.
Right.
Like, most people are not going to have a great understanding of what you just said. Like,
Yeah. Not immediately.
so what would not immediately? They have to study it. But what do you get out of that? And isn't it a lot of coming down to faith, to believing in this stuff? Why should you believe this stuff?
Right. There's definitely a big aspect of it is faith.
Yeah, right.
Right. But these are obviously logical conversations.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
In other words, when we talk about these 3 levels and 3 levels higher, it's to a certain extent, it's logical. It makes sense.
Right.
And when something is logical, it almost needs to be that way.
Because in your way of, I mean, you heard, like, I have this understanding of, like, I have the actions that I do, and then there's the feelings that I have inside me, and then the truths that I know that are true. So that's how I, like, understand what you're saying, right? That's the understanding that I have. So it makes sense. It's not like you're not pulling this out of like, oh, this book says
Exactly.
this is logical to your life.
Exactly.
And that's why I think that answers my own question. Like, why is this information worth sharing? Because it's so interesting how it can connect to your life.
It's psychology. You can first of all understand yourself, understand really who you are, and then there's an aspect of understanding your purpose and how you can connect to God. Right. And when you really understand what you are, then you know in what way you can connect to God.
Right. And that I would ask you, okay, how would I connect to God? Or is that something you need to find for yourself by learning Kabbalah? Do you get that once you learn Kabbalah, once you had a good understanding of...
Do you get what?
You said that you could figure out how to connect to, connect to God, right? That's what you just said.
In other words, in what way, in what approach, you can build a strategy. So somebody can try to connect to God in a crazy way. Like, I'm going to eat the most, the minimal amount that I need to eat. I'm going to pray all day. I'm going to study God all day, think about God all day. So first of all, what are you thinking about? How can you think about God? What you're really thinking about, if anything, you're thinking about how you are just part of God. How do you think about that? What are you thinking about?
It's a very...
How do you know? There's so many... God is one, right? How are you thinking about God? Are you thinking that God is a person, massive, very strong, very powerful, which can do magic? That's not God. And if you're going to be serving a God like that, who said you're serving God? Because if you're going to serve that kind of God, is he loving? So why are you serving him? Because you want him to give you the best life?
That's all about you.
It's really all about you.
It's not about
God. But then if God is a human, he's just much better than you, then why should I serve him?
Yeah, why? Yeah.
Why should I serve him? But when you understand what God is,
that's right.
What you really are going to understand is that there's nothing to understand about God. There's no conversation that can really happen about God himself. Where conversations begin are the way God expresses himself by in creating the world, right? And that's this whole spiritual process. And in this conversation that we just had, we've covered some of the lower levels, and that is looking beyond time and space, realizing that everything is one, everything is cohesive. There's one God, and there's souls, and all the souls are together. But that is not yet a full picture. There's a higher picture than that. That is looking beyond the space, so to speak, because there's no space. Looking beyond where the souls are into where there's just God, so to speak. And then you realize that you are really just part of God. Are you really independent? Should you really be worried about yourself? Or the truth of God? And the more you think about it, the more because this is a very deep topic and very hard to understand, and the way you understand it is not by positively understanding it. And what I mean by that is, you're not really understanding what it is. You just understand the different contrasting, you know how to contrast the different levels. So the more you think about it, the more you kind of understand what you understand and what you don't understand. And then you kind of perhaps realize how small you are, how limited you are. You're really understanding what you are. And that's really how you can connect to God. You're really realizing how small you are. That's really what it's all about, understand.
By understanding where you are in the world,
Yeah.
will make you humbled.
There's an aspect
to serve,
there.
to do what he wants.
Yeah. There's an aspect
And it
of
will
being
make
humble.
you fulfilled.
Yeah. But it's also a question of
Could it be also about making you fulfilled? Because you'll feel
there is
that
fulfillment.
you're not just me. It's not just about me. It's about him. It's about doing what he wants. What he has given to you, why he has created you.
Yes, that's inspirational and that's fulfilling. But think about that specific statement. So why should I learn Kabbalah to be fulfilled?
Mm-hmm. If I already feel.
But if it's about God, then you're learning Kabbalah to be fulfilled. In other words, for you, right?
Yeah.
So it's fine to start learning Kabbalah to think that you're going to feel fulfilled, but at the end of the day,
that down.
At the end of the day,
in a circle.
Right. At the end of the day, what you're going to be getting is that it's not even about fulfillment. It's really just about God, about the truth, about what's real. That's what you really are.
So if you learn Kabbalah right, you won't feel, oh, I'm going to do this because I'm fulfilled. You're going to do this because of God.
It's going to be real. It's going to be very real.
It's going to be real.
Teaches you.
And could a random person get there?
With a lot of study, with a lot of commitment,
Are you there?
You think about it. I'm not there. No.
Okay.
It's a process. You have to take it seriously. And sometimes, you can get caught up in the details and trying to understand the ideas rather. There's a big, we're supposed to be applying it, trying to see how we connect to it.
Mm-hmm.
And these are conceptual ideas that can take away. So we have to set aside time to understand it and then apply it to our own lives, right? And, we go out into the world, we have a job, we do things with our lives, and that's a distraction. So you come back and you have to fix your mistakes, kind of. Right.
Not perfect.
Right. So I think part of what, Kabbalah helps is older schools of Kabbalah would focus more on working their way up. You'd start from a very low spiritual level and try to get higher. More recent schools of Kabbalah say that, but if you think about it, working your way higher is serving yourself. You are trying.
It doesn't seem like we can ever get to the level, the satisfactory level of just serving God, because it doesn't seem we're human beings.
But perhaps that is why it's really just about God. In other words, imagine you would reach the level of just serving God, right? And you made it. Did you hear what I just said?
Yeah, I heard what you said.
You made it. It's about you.
Yeah.
But if it's not about you, then perhaps you don't need to make it to that level. It's okay to be human. It's okay to be on a lower level. Because this is about God. And perhaps God is not looking for our perfection.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. There's really one question which we
addressed
in the beginning, which we was brought up in the beginning. We didn't really answer it. I started saying there's two reasons why today we're able to study Kabbalah, right? So one of them was not fully accurate, and I was basically saying that it's because today we don't really take it so seriously. We're kind of looking at it more intellectually, so we're not really going to snap. But then I started saying how even that's a problem, because there have been people who've taken this information in the wrong way and scammed people with it, right? But the real reason why we're able to learn Kabbalah these days is because there's been a project by masters in the field to, so to speak, filter out the information which we are able to receive.
Is that Chassidus?
And Chassidus is the greatest extent.
Can we explain what Chassidus is?
Maybe we could talk about that, yeah, but maybe not.
Okay, so you're saying
what everybody's hearing here is really Chassidus, right? In other words, the way we're explaining it, and it's not really the way, it's really it's the intention. The intention behind the subconscious of the explanation is really Chassidus. Chassidus, if you would want to sum up, and I've asked this question to many people, if you would want to sum up the entire Chassidus into one idea, what would that be? And almost everyone agrees. I don't think I ever heard anybody saying otherwise. The one idea of the entire Chassidus is that there is nothing else besides for God. God is the only thing. It's the one idea. And perhaps one of the reasons why Kabbalah was kept secret all these years is because Kabbalah talks about all these different levels, and it breaks everything down into so many levels. And you can understand that so wrong. You can understand that there are so many levels between us and God. But what Chassidus comes and tells us is that all these levels are, there is nothing else besides for God. There's only God. So what does that mean that there's only God? There is only God. Why did God create the world? There is only God, right? So if this world is here, it's for that purpose of there is only God, right? So the fact that we cannot really serve God to the fullest extent is because there is only God.
Even you explaining that, it's kind of making me like what you said is that we should striving to just be perfect is not what God wants from us. He wants us to just, I don't know what you were saying about like just to know that He is God, like
be as sincere as possible.
Sincere,
as sincere as possible. Do good acts, right? And what is all that about?
Don't be perfect,
right?
I don't expect you to be perfect.
Right. It's kind of do your best.
It's dangerous words, I think.
What, do your best?
Yeah. Because what is your best? Who decides what's your best?
So the way
I'm doing my best, I'm just doing I'm doing one thing a day. You know, I'm doing my best.
Right.
Who's to say that's your best?
Right.
That's not your best. You can do better. It's an excuse. It could be an excuse. Maybe.
So I think that the main idea and the main difference between Chassidus and just pure Kabbalah is about relationship. Chassidus, I think, looks at it as if there is only God. So the fact that we exist is part of that idea that there's only God, which means we're supposed to be in a relationship with God. We're supposed to be part of there's only God. We're supposed to be part of that experience, right?
Yeah. I think what the controversy, I'm going to ask you this. Could it be the controversy? Because it's been Chabad that's been pushing this from the beginning, this openness to Kabbalah, basically, right? Am I right about that? And it's basically saying, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be connected to God. you can just be like, I don't want to say you can just try your best, or like, you just need to know that he is, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Help me out here. Like,
Yeah, I think I get what you're trying to say. There's try to be your best.
yeah.
So it's a very interesting idea.
It's controversial because most sects of Jews are like Musser.
Right.
By the way, you don't have to add this in. But like they're trying, you're not perfect. You gotta work hard. The Chabad's not learning Kabbalah is not that. It's not about pushing yourself and pushing yourself and pushing. It's accepting who you are, that you are human, and you can serve God in your human form. You don't need to be perfect to serve a God.
So you know what I think? I'll give an analogy from a criminal. And I think it's a good way to look at it. Everybody deep inside has within them goodness, right? Has within them a soul. Has within them a child. Even the most vicious of criminals. And let's not get into the names because the answer is going to be yes. The most vicious of criminals. There is nobody who is pure evil in this universe. The most vicious person you're going to think about, don't say his name because the answer is yes.
Right.
Has a child within him. And when I say child, I mean, look at a 1-year-old child, a 1-month-old child, baby which was just born. He's good. He's created in the image of God. And there's only goodness there. And that's a reflection of the soul. And then throughout the turbulence of life, becomes evil. Becomes evil. It becomes fully covered in evil. Bad. But really it's good deep down. The question is, and these days there's a bit of a thing about that. People try to justify criminals, people who've harmed other people, done bad things, and say like, oh, he was a sad case. Oh,
Yeah, good excuse.
he had a problem.
It's not a good excuse, but he had an excuse.
Oh, he really tried and he fell through. Okay, you've harmed somebody, and you may have harmed somebody in a very bad, in the worst way. So let me ask you a question. How should we speak to people who can have very bad ideas? The worst idea possible. How should we speak to them? Should we tell them, you must listen, you need to do this and this, you never do that. If you're going to do that, we're going to punish you. We're going to put you in jail for years. That is one way. Or should we tell them, you have good inside of you, you have bad inside of you, the bad was victorious, and you need to work on your good. You need to work on your good. Try to be a better person. Try to help yourself. So the more healthy way, and the way which works, think about education. If you screaming at a child doesn't work, right? Punishing doesn't necessarily work, because then you're forcing them to be something they're not. So the second they're out of that, they're going to go back to doing whatever they were doing. So you can force a criminal to be a better person. You can lock him up. The second they're going to come out, they're going to go back to whatever they were, perhaps. I mean, maybe these days they give them good books to read, and perhaps people try to change themselves while they're sitting there and waiting. So there's definitely this idea of be your best. That's what's effective, and that's what's real. But if there's a person who's harming other people, he can't be running around, right? He has to be locked up.
Right.
He has to be put away. You can't harm other people. We understand that you're a good person and we want to help you focus on your good. You can't harm other people while you're on this journey of becoming a better person, of finding the good in you. And I think that this is a bit of the balance in that question. God is everything, and we really need to connect to him. It's not about you being your best. It's really about God. That's the truth. That's the ultimate truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we try to shove that down our throats, then it's not real. And if we shove the truth down our throats and say, God is everything, so I'm gonna be studying God for 12 hours every day, and I'm not gonna waste a moment on eating a second extra than I need to, and I'm gonna pray all the time, and I'm only gonna sleep 3 hours a night, right? And I'm gonna try. I'm not gonna waste my time speaking to people because I need to think about God. I want to always connect to God, right? I'm forcing myself. That's not human. And if somebody's gonna do that, definitely if it's gonna be without stages and a process, it's gonna be fake.
Mm-hmm.
You're fake. You're not really holding there. Perhaps if they would do it going through all the Kabbalah levels, then they would be there. So that's one way you can do it. Or you can tell a guy, be your best. And motivate them. Tell them God loves you. You have a soul. You're connected to God. You want to be connected to God. Do your best. Don't destroy yourself. Don't shove yourself in a closet. Don't hurt yourself. Don't try to force yourself. Be you and connect that you to God, because this is what God wants. God wants a relationship. God is real. God is everywhere, right? But that does not mean that no, I don't need to serve God anymore because God loves me anyways.
Right.
I can't mess anything over. That would be the equivalent of a criminal doing very bad things to other people.
Right.
So to a certain extent, we need to tell ourselves, I can't mess up God's plan. You do need to have a certain aspect of fear, of being scared of God, right? You can't destroy the plan, right? God loves you. You can't destroy the plan.
I guess the question is, so you're talking about like, okay, what's the plan?
Imagine your child, which you're trying to educate, takes a knife, right? And he's about to cut himself, right? What do? You go grab that knife. This is not time for kind education.
Right.
You need to save himself. You need to save that guy right now. You need to save that kid, right? So this is really what we need to tell ourselves in our relationship with God. When it comes to doing the basics of what God wants us to do, right? We need to do that. You need to put yourself a thing like, you can't take a knife and cut yourself, right? You need to do the minimum of what God wants you to do. Be a good person in the level that you are. And for Jews, that's obviously the 613 mitzvahs, right? And you should, to a certain extent, force yourself to do that. And be harsh, to a certain extent, be harsh on yourself to do that. And perhaps, if somebody has not been doing any of that till now, and now they're starting their journey to do that, then obviously they should work with a mentor or rabbi, somebody who can guide them through that journey so that they don't go crazy. Because if somebody's going to start doing everything right away, he's not going to manage.
Right.
But on the other hand, you can't just allow yourself like, oh, God loves me. I'm just going to do whatever I want. Oh, whatever. Oh, I'm going to be my best. Wait, you have to have a plan of how you're going to get to the best. But there's also that aspect of making it real, right? So we have to try to do. We need to listen to God because He is the truth. He's the real thing. But we also need to try to bring ourselves in. Try to tell us to be our best.